so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
All right, good evening. It is Wednesday night, October 22nd. Indiana is sitting at 7-0, 4-0 in the Big Ten, and we're here to talk a little football. So come drop your questions and comments in the comments section on Twitter and on YouTube. So come join us. It looks like it's only going to be me tonight, so I do need your questions and audience participation. And we'll get to some of the hot topics coming up. So just to set the scene for Saturday, Indiana takes on UCLA at noon on Fox. It is Fox's big noon kickoff game, so they will be on the south end zone to the stadium set up. Indiana put out their timeline of events. I think parking lots open at 7:30. Let me bring it up real quick. But should be a festive atmosphere in Bloomington. Hopefully the weather holds together all right. And then, you have big noon Saturday. So lots open at 7 o'clock, 8:30. The gates for big noon kickoff open. The walk is at 9:35. 10 o'clock, big noon kickoff starts. If you're not in Bloomington, that is on Fox. And then 10:30, gates open of Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. And then 12 noon kickoff. Phil Fowler, good question. Any news on the UCLA quarterback injury? According to Bruins Source, which is their 247 site, he did participate in practice today, but he was not with the team during stretch, and they presume that he was getting treatment, but he did go through individual drills. But it does not look like he was a full participant in practice. Without any other knowledge other than that, I do think he'll probably dress for the game. It'll be a game-time decision. It's something I've kept an eye on, but he has been a participant in practice, but he was not with the team during stretch, presumably to get treatment on that knee for that knee injury. I also believe UCLA is flying out on Thursday, so they'll be in Bloomington Thursday night, Friday night, and then, of course, the game's on Saturday. So we'll see. That's a thing we've been keeping our eye on. Good question, Phil. UCLA's backup quarterback has not thrown a pass this year. So just to look ahead, just in case that's the issue there. They do not have much experience behind Nico Iamaleava. All right, some keys to the game this week. It's one of those games that's it's not a ton on the Big Ten slate outside of Illinois, Washington, and Michigan State for the rivalry game. So all eyes are going to be on this one. People are picking it as kind of an upset or a trap game for Indiana. They hit the road next week to go to Maryland. UCLA has been on fire recently after getting rid of their entire coaching staff, or at least their coordinators and their head coach. They've won 3 in a row, starting with that Penn State game, which people it's kind of fluky, yes, but they did play well. They've started to play hard, which they weren't doing the first 4 games of the season. And then they beat Maryland last week, and then went to Michigan State and beat the Spartans 38-13 up in East Lansing. So they've kind of turned a corner. They're coming in red hot. Indiana is – people are still – now they're giving Indiana credit finally, but people are still waiting for something to happen or them to overlook a team And I think the way Aiden Childs played last week kind of gives you concern with Nico playing and his style of game there. Indiana has been susceptible to the quarterback run. We know that from week one. And then Aiden Childs ripped off a 64-yarder last week. Now it's late in the game, and it didn't really matter, but it was still something that popped its head again this season. So, yeah, people are kind of, 25.5-point spread is big. I think a lot of that has to do with Iamalava's injury and injury status, which is unknown. So we'll see. This is a game where I do like that it's a noon game, a 9 a.m. body clock kick for UCLA, and I think that helps IU a lot in terms of getting off to a fast start and getting the crowd involved and things like So, maybe people, when UCLA started 0-4 and lost to New Mexico and Northwestern, who's now 5-2, and UNLV started selling tickets or, giving them, hey, this game's not that big or not going to be that exciting. So hopefully the crowd shows up. It was a sold-out crowd on Saturday against Michigan State, but it seemed like a more tempered crowd. Anyway, I don't know if that was because there was a storm incoming, but it was that. So let's get in. Let's get some questions in, and then we'll get into matchups that I'm watching. I'll give score predictions and stuff like that, and maybe look into the future about playoff positioning. Indiana being in the driver's seat for the Big Ten title game, and then maybe some potential. We'll go down the rabbit hole of who they might play. I think it's going to be Ohio State. Should Ohio State lose at Michigan or lose a game, it gets real funky and real interesting real quick. So we'll see. So I'll give you guys about a minute to get questions in, and then we'll move on to matchups I'm looking at on Saturday. Another good question from Pollard. How does IU handle the Wyatt injury? Excuse me. I think Stephen Daly goes in there at first. He's been really good in kind of that backup role, and he's played a lot more. He's an athletic freak, just like Kellen Wyatt. Maybe not as good as pass coverage as Wyatt, but I think Daly will be the guy going forward there. Maybe you see Mikhail Kamara in that position a little bit more. It's hard to tell without seeing practice. Andrew Turvey came in for Wyatt when he went out during Oregon. I do think you see Daniel and Dukwe play a little bit more. You're going to need bodies. I said this on the podcast with TJ yesterday. You got to start looking at it as a 15, 16, 17 game season instead of a 13-game season. So getting some guys, some reps who've already used their red shirt, who can't get a year back is going to be important. Now, we don't get to see practice in season, so it's very difficult to tell who's ready and what freshmen and all that stuff. But, they're freshmen. They want to keep their red shirts. So, and I don't think any of them have played in any games. So maybe you see a combination of those to where they get to keep a red shirt, but also get to play in their 4 games. But the 3 guys I'd look at are Stephen Daly, Mikhail Kamara coming back over, maybe play more defensive tackles, and then Andrew Turvey in there as well. And Diapepe brothers have played as well at the end spot. Maybe you see them go in there, but it's going to be about who this coaching staff trusts the most. But I think it's a bigger injury than people realize. Now, not everybody. I think a lot of people realize it's a big injury, but from people kind of brushing it off that Daly comes in and is just as successful. He could be, but I think Wyatt really gave them something special with his ability to drop back in coverage from his time at linebacker, and then he was really getting after the quarterback and getting into the backfield and creating havoc. So that's a big injury for Indiana. Hopefully he's able to come back by the end of the season, but from what Six said, it does not look like we'll see Kellen Wyatt again on the football field this year. Good question. Keep them coming. We got a lot to talk about. Go till about 9:30 if we want to. I'll give you another 30 seconds, and then we'll get into matchups to watch. I would like to see Kobe Martin play more. Again, this goes back to that. Pretending, looking at the season at 15, 16 games instead of 13 games. He has shown now. It is in the fourth quarter. It has been kind of garbage time, but he runs the ball really hard. He hits the hole. He could explode through it. He breaks tackles. He takes care of the football. Knock on wood. I do think he has earned a few more high leverage carries, and I do think to keep Hemby and Black a little bit fresher, that will help too. Now he has to be able to block and pass protection, and he needs to catch the ball in the backfield, but there's no reason he should get one or two carries a game. He's already redshirted. He's proven he can be effective. So I'd like to see Kobe Martin some more. From Jennifer, what thoughts about Kamara's production this year versus last year? There's a lot of thoughts. He's switched positions to the other side of the line. He's gaining more attention from the opposing offenses, and I think there's been an adjustment there. He does. I think our Jamie Jordan has said he's still at the top on pressures in the 20s with quarterback pressures and pressures in the backfield and things like that. He just needs to make plays, and maybe this is with Kellen Wyatt's injury, you put him back at that position. He was so successful last year, and let him go make plays. But he came into the season saying he wanted to break the single season sack record, which was, I believe, 16 from 2007. He's not close. That's probably off the table now. But I wouldn't call it disappointing, but it's a little shocking he has not been more. It's filled up the stat sheet a little bit more, but he has been in on plays a little bit more the last couple weeks than he has at the beginning of the season. And it would be nice if the officials would call a hold or two against opposing offensive lines, because they have been holding Indiana all season with minimal to no flags. So thank you for the question, Jennifer. That was a good one. All right, let's get into matchups to watch. I have two that I've circled. one on defense and one on offense. The first one is Indiana's linebacker play versus Nico. Nico. We'll just call him Nico. We're not going to mess around with that tonight. I got it right the first time, and then it's just been a tongue twister since. Another thing IU might have to do without Kellen Wyatt is play more of their three linebacker set, which they have been doing, because that's been their best defense on the field with Isaiah Jones, Elijah Hardy, and Aiden Fisher. One of them is going to have to spy on UCLA's quarterback. He can kill you with his feet. He could also kill you with his arm. He's very, very talented. I know he had his issues at Tennessee and his issues at the beginning of the year, but the level of talent was not in question. His decision-making is, his, putting the ball in harm's way is a concern, but Indiana needs to keep him contained, and they've had trouble with that with quarterbacks this year. With the ODU quarterback, Colton Joseph, they let up those two big touchdown passes. With Aiden Childs against Michigan State, they let him extend plays with his feet, and Michigan State used screens and other plays to kind of use Indiana's aggressiveness against them. But if Indiana's linebackers can contain the quarterback, Indiana should be pretty good on defense and holding UCLA down. On the opposite side, and this goes back to Kobe Martin as well, it's Indiana's run game versus UCLA's defense. I don't think UCLA could stop Indiana's passing game. Not very many people can, if at all. But Indiana's run game, we haven't seen it really tee off like we have since Illinois. I would like to see them establish the run, get back to doing that stuff on the ground. UCLA comes into the game allowing a Big Ten worst 186 yards per game on the ground. So that, should be a good day for this offensive line and these running backs. Indiana is second in the Big Ten in rushing at 226 yards per game. So it should be a good game to get that running game going, build the pass off of it, give people, something else to talk about other than Fernando Mendoza in the passing game, which has been elite, but you still need to play complementary football and have multiple ways to beat people. All right, send in some more questions. Those are my two matchups to watch. I'm interested to see if anybody else has anything different. Thoughts on the toughest remaining game on the schedule? It's at Penn State. They're spiraling and taking a nosedive, but you're still going to Penn State. I'm not as worried about it as I was 2 months ago. But you're going into a place that you've never won before, which it's not going to scare Signetti or this team, but it's still something that hasn't happened. We'll see what they do against Ohio State in 2 weeks. I know a lot of people are nervous about this game, and what kind of gives me hesitation to not be nervous is that they've lost, 4 in a row? Four games in a row now? Or 3 games in a row? Yeah, four in a row. And you go to Ohio State. Ohio State's looking to get, they're not going to hold up on anybody. I think this is a game where they'll beat Penn State's brains in if they want to. They want to be the number 1 seed in the playoff. Everybody's talking about Indiana being the top team in the Big Ten and having the best win on the schedule and all that stuff. And Ohio State has just been, I don't want to say going through the motions, they've just been cruising along. They've had some growing pains with Julian Sayin, but he's get better every single week. And I think, if if you're Penn State and you go to Ohio State and get your butts kicked, everything you came back for is off the table. You're not going to the playoff. You're not going to win a Big Ten title, and you're not going to beat Ohio State. Those were the three big things that all these guys, and Aller's out for the year too. But those are the three things that all these guys came back to do. Kind of like what Michigan did 2 years ago, Ohio State did last year, and it just completely fell apart. So I don't know who will be playing against Indiana for Penn State, but if you're an NFL guy who's getting ready for the draft and you just saw your starting quarterback get hurt for the year, that's probably going to affect his draft stock. How hard are you going? How, or do you, opt out? I hate that it's come to that in the sport that we're just going to opt out, but you beat you beat Indiana and you go 5-7. That's why you're going to put your NFL career at risk. I don't know. But it is the toughest remaining game on the schedule. We've seen top teams go into West Lafayette at night and get beat. I don't know if that's going to be the case this year. That's always a tricky game because it is a rivalry game. But the rumors on the internet are that Indiana has a lot of fans going up to Ross-Ade, so maybe that's not as daunting as, it might have been a couple years ago. But yeah, Penn State's the toughest game remaining on the schedule. And people will say Maryland too, but it's Maryland's doing their Mike Locksley special. They started 4-0. They were 1 quarter away from 5-0 in a national ranking, and they've just fallen apart. How do you think IU matches up against Ohio State? I think they're. I wouldn't say even. I would give the edge to Ohio State a little bit, but you look at Ohio State's defensive line with Caden Curry is very, very good. Indiana's offensive line is arguably the best in the country. That's a matchup that, whoever wins that line of scrimmage probably wins that matchup. Jeremiah Smith against D'Angelo Pons is another good matchup. But it comes down to who's your secondary people in the defensive backfield who could cover Ohio State's second and third receivers. They still have outstanding receivers behind Jeremiah Smith, and they're just getting better. Nobody's talking about them all that much as, they're clearly the best team in the country and all that stuff, but they've kind of gone under the radar in that aspect. It's, here Ohio State won again, but Indiana's taking all the headlines. Offensively, Fernando Mendoza is probably the better quarterback right now. But in 3 weeks, Julian Saint has been really, really good, and he's going to be in the Heisman conversation. It'd be an elite matchup. And I think it's probably the most even matchup Ohio State and Indiana would have had probably since the 80s in terms of talent and size and skills. So if that's a matchup in Indianapolis, it should be a really good one. And hopefully Hoosier fans are the ones that fill up the Lucas Oil Stadium. That's a good question. All right. Give you guys another couple minutes to get questions in, and then we'll move up into kind of predictions. All right, game predictions for IU UCLA. I said on the podcast I thought I'd picked Indiana 45, UCLA 20. That's we'll get to that in a second. Phil Fowler, how thoughts about the best wide receiver duo in the country? They're up there. They're definitely up there. And here's the thing: that they're mature, physically and mentally mature, with a great quarterback and a great offensive line. And you could throw EJ Williams in there too, because he's another older guy who's physical, who can make plays, who knows how to play in this offense. But Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper have been awesome this year. We wrote about them today on the site, so if you haven't read it, I'll share the link in the comments. But they're so good. And I thought Saturday was going to be kind of EJ Williams's breaking out party with how it started. Now, if that second touchdown gets called, I'm probably correct. And I don't know. I'm not even going to talk about that rule because it's dumb. But it seems that Indiana, doesn't seem like you could take either one of them away anymore. But you could focus on Elijah Surratt, and then Omar Cooper's going to go for a big day. And then if you take Omar Cooper away, Elijah Surratt in the fourth quarter is absolute money. He was absolute money against Iowa. He was absolute money against Oregon. So it truly is pick your poison, and they haven't been stopped yet. And they just seem like they know, with being another year older than last year, and they just physically dominate people as well. And they know how to get pass interference calls. They know how to do these back shoulder throws that have become very well. And then when you have a quarterback like Fernando Mendoza put the ball wherever he wants to, it's unguardable. Like that Elijah Surratt catch and throw for the second touchdown. Like, how are you defending that? You go back to the throw to EJ Williams against Iowa. How are you defending that? There's just no defense other than getting a pass rush, and this offensive line has done a really, really good job of not allowing that. So, yeah, they're up there. I think Jeremiah Smith, I thought he was the best. I picked him to win the Heisman. I thought he was the best skill player in college football coming into the season. He is still very, very good. So it is, man, those two are really good. And then I just haven't watched a ton outside of the Big Ten this year. But you look at, Jeremiah Smith, 49 catches, 602 yards. Carnell Tate, who's been around for a while with Ohio State, 34 catches, 587 yards, and 6 touchdowns, 13 touchdowns total between the two of them. I mean, that's what, if you're a casual college football fan and you take the labels off the helmet, that's a matchup you want to watch every Saturday. Give me the four best receivers in the Big Ten, and two of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and let's go play ball. It's a lot of fun. So game prediction for Saturday, I said UCLA, the UCLA game, Indiana 45, UCLA 20. We'll see if UCLA takes the Michigan State blueprint of kind of limiting possessions. That's where they went with Michigan State. Iowa did the same thing, kind of limit possessions. Indiana only had 3 possessions in the first half against Michigan State. Now they scored all 3 times. They scored the first 5 times, and they ended up, I don't count the last 30-second drive where they take a knee as a drive. They scored on 6 out of 7 possessions before taking a knee and kneeling it out. So Indiana's going to have to be efficient. I think they will be against this defense. But I do think it's a higher possession game than last week, and UCLA can put up some points. They've been very good on offense with Jerry Neuheisel. They also have taken everything out of the playbook and will throw a surprise onside kick, a fake punt. You got to be ready for everything on Saturday if you're Indiana. So, as Sig said, he threw out the first 4 games. He's watched the last 3 on tape, and it's going to be interesting to see what UCLA does. Who steps up for Wyatt? Phil, we discussed this earlier in the show. I do think it's Stephen Daly. Maybe see Mikhail Kamara go back to that spot for a little bit, and then you have Andrew Turvey, Daniel and Dukeway, and then maybe 1 or 2 of the Pepe brothers in there. All right, we got a 52-21 win for Tino. Win it for Tino. Yeah, Tino Cicceri left IU, went out to be the offensive coordinator at UCLA, and lost his job 4 games into the tenure. Kind of a warning sign of leaving a staff at a Big Ten school to go take a promotion under a coach who's kind of on the hot seat. But yeah, I just don't know if there's going to be that many possessions. I think the book on Indiana now is to limit possessions, and look, if they score 6 out of 7 times, they'll do that. $41-17. That's a good pick too. I took the over last week. That was fine for me. That last garbage time field goal with the backdoor cover, but that's the nature of gambling, right? It's not free money, and sometimes you lose. That's what makes it dangerous. So we'll see. And also in NCAA news now, I think starting next year, NCAA players can bet on pro sports. So we'll see. We'll see how far down the rabbit hole it goes with betting. But I don't think conferences, TV networks, and all those things are returning the advertising checks and all that money. So sorry, my desk is falling apart. All right, playoff predictions. Let's get into some playoff and Big Ten predictions before that, because the Big Ten title game will come before the playoff, obviously. I hope not, but hey, it's Indiana. The forecast changes every 15 minutes. The storms are supposed to hold off until after the game last week, and then all of a sudden that morning, you saw the thunderclouds come out from the south and the southwest, and it didn't look great. But the forecast for Saturday, 4% chance of rain, 59 is the high, low of 48, partly cloudy. So bring your sweatshirt. Thoughts about Riley Nowakowski? Good question. I love talking about Riley Nowakowski because he's a guy I kind of identified in fall camp as he might actually be better than everybody's thinking with how now it was against the air, but he caught the ball and ran the ball better. I know we joked about with Rhett Lewis a couple weeks ago that he needs the neck guard, the neck roll, and the center bar face mask. He's too fast for that. He needs the PF Flyers. He's been awesome. He's been an absolute rock in blocking. He's been a playmaker when needed in the passing game, and he can run the ball too. You saw him score a touchdown at the fullback position against Kennesaw State. So if you need to throw that wrinkle in there, you can. And then him in the passing game on those screens, he gets up field faster than people think. I mean, it was – you saw it against Illinois, and he kind of hit the turbo button, and you're like, whoa, you didn't know he had that in him. And then again against Michigan State last week. But he's been one of the under-talked about, under-heralded players on this offense, full of a lot of good players. And it kind of makes you forget about Holden Stays, who came in as a more highly regarded transfer, as the top transfer at tight end. But Riley Nowakowski is filled in great for Zach Horton. It's kind of become a Zach Horton 2.0, probably with a little bit more athleticism. But, yeah, that he has been really, really good. All right, let's get some Big Ten predictions, projections on out there. We'll talk it through. A lot of it is talking to myself, which drives me kind of crazy, but that's all right. Right now, the Big Ten standings, Indiana and Ohio State are at the top at 4-0. If they both win out, that's the matchup. Indiana does have, if they lose a game, you're going to have to hope that either Michigan or USC lose and go to take that second loss, because IU will have the tiebreaker over Oregon. I think they'll have the tiebreaker over Northwestern, who's sitting at 3-1. They have the tiebreaker over Iowa, who's sitting at 3-1. There's a lot of teams in here that 3-1 start at UCLA, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, USC, Northwestern, and Oregon. A lot of 3-1s where you didn't think that those teams would be in it. Like, if you told me that UCLA could control their own destiny for a Big Ten title on October 22nd after starting 0-4, I would have called you crazy. But here they are. Same with Northwestern. USC does play Oregon. One of them have to lose. But right now it's probably IU. I did go down that rabbit hole on Twitter the other night. But yeah, let's get down CFP predictions by conference. So we're going to have to write it out. So 12 teams, 11 of them are probably coming from the Power Four. So one G5 team. Let's start with the ACC. I think the ACC has you got two teams with a decent chance, or three teams. You got three teams with a decent chance. You got Georgia Tech, Virginia, and Miami, even though Miami lost. Now, Miami does not control their own destiny for an ACC title, which kind of hurts them for getting into the playoff and stuff. They're losing to Louisville really, really stings their chance to go to the playoff. Georgia Tech is 4-0, 7-0, and they're sitting at 7th in the AP poll. They can go to the ACC championship game. They also play Georgia at the end of the year. So they're, let's say, 11-1. They could be an 11-1 conference champion to get in. So I'll give Georgia Tech that. Now, Virginia is at 3-0, 6-1. If Virginia does not play Miami, they get North Carolina, at Cal, versus Wake Forest, at Duke, versus Virginia Tech. It could be a Virginia, Georgia Tech ACC title game. I don't know if the loser gets in. So I think there's one team from the ACC. Let's go down the list. Big 12. Big 12 gets interesting. I also think they're a one big league. You've got BYU sitting in 11th. They're 7-0, 4-0 in the conference. The Fighting Brendan Sorsbys are 21, 4-0 in the conference, 6-1. And then I think anybody with two losses. I mean, Texas Tech is there too at 3-1, but their quarterback situation could come back to bite them in the rear end. They do get Oklahoma State this week, but then they also have to play BYU later in the year and at Kansas State, which Kansas State's not great, but going to Manhattan's tough. I think Big 12 is a one bid league unless it's Texas Tech, BYU in the championship game, and Texas Tech wins, which gives you a one-loss BYU team and a bid stealer in Texas Tech, assuming that Texas Tech loses to BYU in the regular season. Actually, that wouldn't. No, they'd go to 3-2. Cincinnati could actually make it, but I don't think they make it to the playoffs. So I give Big 12 one bid right now. So that's 3 spots taken with the G5, who I think it's going to be South Florida right now. And then 3 out of the Big 10, the way things are going. I think it's Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. For that 4th team in there, you're looking at USC and Michigan. Both have 2 losses, though. One in conference, and the 2 losses, the out-of-conference losses, USC lost to Notre Dame, and then Michigan lost to Oklahoma, which Oklahoma's kind of fallen apart without their quarterback here. Illinois is still in the conversation because they have the 2 best losses, and I don't know if they have another win on the schedule that'll boost their resume. They get at Washington, which is kind of the battle of those 4th teams to go to the Big Ten, to go to the playoff, and then they get Rutgers at home, Maryland at Wisconsin, and Northwestern. If they finish 10-2, they might be in. So I'm going to give the Big Ten 4 teams. I think 4 teams get in from the Big Ten, with that 4th team being either USC or Illinois. Notre Dame might get in. I got to look at the rest of their schedule. They're going to be. I mean, people eliminated them. They're 5-2. They're sitting at 12th in the AP, which is kind of a dangerous spot to be, with the G5 team coming up from the mid-teens or below them. They don't have another game that really is a resume builder. At Boston College versus Navy is probably their best game left. At Pitt versus Syracuse, at Stanford. They're going to need to start doing what Indiana did last year. If Michigan loses, they're out. If any Big Ten team takes a 3rd loss, they're out. And there are a couple Big Ten teams who, if they take a 2nd loss, are out. But if Michigan loses to Michigan State, they're out. But that game hasn't happened. So I do think 4 from the Big Ten. Notre Dame's a maybe. Just sitting at 12 is they could get jumped by the automatic bid from the group of 5. I don't think Notre Dame should be in, but we'll see. I think results should matter. And then from the SEC, you're going to have the SEC champion. That's 1. You have a whole bunch sitting at 6-1. I think Texas is out at 5-2. But only 1 loss. So 1 loss SEC conference teams: Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Missouri, Texas, Ole Miss, Georgia, Alabama has 0 losses in the SEC, and Texas A&M 0 losses in the SEC. Alabama holds the tiebreaker over Georgia for that, and we'll see what comes out. I do think, that puts it at, if you put 4 SEC teams in, you probably make Notre Dame the 12th team in. But let's say the SEC gets 4 teams in. I'll go Alabama, Texas A&M. We'll see what Georgia does against Georgia Tech. That could be their saving grace. That's another big, a top 25 win and all that stuff. So more satisfying. If South Florida wins against Memphis, they are out. Who's out? Memphis? Yeah, I mean, Memphis. Where's Memphis sitting in the AP rankings? South Florida is currently the highest rated G5 school. Memphis is not even Memphis is drop from the rankings. They're not even receiving votes because they lost to UAB. So they're out. Right now, the group of 5 teams that are the highest rated, South Florida at 18, Tulane is receiving votes at with 37, Navy at 28. And then James Madison, or San Diego State, James Madison, Boise State. So it's probably going to be one of South Florida, Tulane, Navy. Navy gets a shot at Notre Dame. That could help them. But, I mean, South Florida's got to probably win out. I think any of those teams that take a loss, or there's a group of 5 bunching at the bottom of the rankings where if one team takes a loss, and that Florida win looks not as impressive anymore. Do you think any 3-loss teams get in? I hope not. I really hope not. You're looking at 3-loss teams. There are no 3-loss teams in the top 25. The highest ranked 2-loss team is Notre Dame at 5-2. If they lose to anybody on the rest of their schedule, I think they're out. They should have been out at the beginning. But if they drop one of their last 5 games, they should be out. Tennessee has 2 losses. They're at 17. If they drop a third one, they're out. LSU shouldn't be close to the top 20. Why they're still ranked is embarrassing. And then you have Texas, Illinois, Arizona State, and Michigan. I think anybody who takes a third loss this year is out, and that's the way it should be. Like, you had your chance to beat teams, and you didn't. So that's, to me, that's what the playoffs should be. It's keep the regular season. And I know I made some people mad with basketball comments last year and trying to stick my nose up at it. Stop trying to be the NCAA tournament. It's not that. The NCAA tournament's great. I love the NCAA tournament, but there are teams in there who don't deserve to be in there. And now they're going to expand it some more or whatever, and it takes away from the regular season. In a 3-loss team, if you're going to just put 3-loss teams, well, they have this many 5-stars and this many 4-stars. Just take the recruiting rankings, put 24 teams in, let them play a tournament in December and get it over with, because that's not what the sport's about. All right, last 10 minutes for questions. So I do think that it'll end up being Indiana, Ohio State for the Big Ten title. I think they end their streak against Michigan. I think they're just, although we said that last year, we said that they played at home. They're a much more talented team than Michigan, and they lost. So, Michigan gets them at home this year. And anything could happen. Ohio State probably shouldn't have been in the playoff last year either, but they went on and won it all to their credit, and now they're coming back, and they have 2 of the best players on each side of the ball, and Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith, and I mean they're somehow on. Ohio State is the number 1 team in the country, and somehow they're going under the radar, in my opinion. All right, last 10 minutes for questions. Then we got to go because I have another podcast after this. Oh, good question, Phil. More satisfying for IU to get a bye or play an SEC game at home. Ooh, does that come with a Big Ten title with a bye? Because I think that would sweeten the deal a little bit. I think having a home playoff game would be awesome. I hope that IU has Memorial Stadium ready to go in December in the cold and does not have burst pipes and stuff like that. But I think getting a home playoff game would be cool. But if winning the Big Ten is part of that getting a bye, you got to take the Big Ten title, right? And then because how many shots do you have at the Big Ten title? Not many. I mean, even if you're good, there's 18 teams in the Big Ten, and there could be a year where you just mathematically don't make it because your schedule wasn't correct, or you didn't play the right people at the right time, and the other team played one more team who had a better winning percentage, and it's just all that tiebreak. So yeah, give me the Big Ten title. Give me wherever they send the Big Ten champion, probably the Rose Bowl or wherever IU would. Because if they win the Big Ten title and go 13-0, they're probably the number one seed, and you get to choose where you go. So the home game would be pretty sweet to make an SEC team come up and play in the cold would be awesome. Give me all the frozen tears from down south. It's a tough question. It's a good question. I'm not the only one who has nightmares about the Jets, Jamie. I joked about this with the guys on Monday. So, the Jets are going to pick you. Do you stay in school? I mean, they're just look. I'm a Jets fan, and I've been a Jets fan for a while. Unfortunately, one of my best friends in elementary school, his dad was doctor for the Jets, and we went to a lot of Jets games, a lot of bad Jets games, and that's how you get sucked into being a Jets fan. So they're a terribly run organization. They have not sniffed any kind of success since I was in college and since Bill Lynch was on the sideline at IU. It tells you how long it's been. Mark Sanchez is the second greatest quarterback in franchise history, and he's doing time downtown Indianapolis. So, yeah, if you're Fernando, you hope the Jets screw up and win a game, or you maybe go, hey, I have another year eligibility. Sig, come sweeten the pot, and, well, give it to the Jets. They might go 0-17 2 years in a row. But, roll your dice. People have refused to go anyway. You had John Elway refused to go to the Colts, and Eli Manning refusing to go to the Chargers too. So, yeah, that's not my Jets nightmare, Jamie. It's not my Jets nightmare. All right, 5 more minutes for questions, and enough about the Jets. I'm sick of talking about the Jets. They suck. They're so bad. Can't believe you have nightmares about the Jets being good. But yeah, big game coming up Saturday, noon kickoff, Fox Big Noon. Who's the best IU quarterback ever in the NFL? Great question. See who you got. Who do you have? You have. All right. I mean, Trent Green, Babe Laffenberg, Nate Sudfeld, Curtis Rourke is in there now. I mean, Antoine, does he have to play quarterback? Like Antoine had a real nice NFL career, won a Super Bowl, threw a touchdown pass in the Super Bowl. Trent Green had a really nice career too. I don't count Penix as IU anymore. I don't. He left. He spent 2 years at Washington. Like, happy for him. Love the guy, but I don't think I don't count him as an IU NFL quarterback. Most underrated quarterback, Ben Chappell. Man, he was a gamer. The 2010 game against Purdue, he could barely walk, and he's just firing missiles down. Although he had that one pass against Northwestern in 2007 that went for pick six, but I'll put that one on the coaching staff. He came in for Kellen Lewis. The first play you throw a pass, just run the ball. Yeah, most underrated IU quarterback. How about Peyton Ramsey? I know I was not a huge Peyton Ramsey fan in terms of his talent, but the guy could play. I mean, he just won games. And I didn't have the physical skill set that Michael Penix had, but he stayed healthy and won a lot of games for IU. Trey Roberson, another good one. But yeah. All right, guys, it is 9:28. I got to cut this off. Thank you for joining. Yeah, he did make plays, and he made the right play a lot of the times, except for that 2017 Michigan game where he made the wrong read at the goal line twice. But yeah, anyway, got to hop on another podcast to preview this week's game because, more national attention for IU football is great. We'll be back next week, hopefully with guests and all that stuff, and we should be starting these basketball chats up shortly. Once we get to see the team play a little bit more, it'll be easier to talk about hoops and all that stuff. So thanks for joining. Thanks for your questions and discussions. So I'm not just sitting here as an idiot talking on the internet by himself. I'll be an idiot talking on the internet to other people. So thanks, Phil. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Chris. Anybody who's Pollard, thank you. Anybody who sent in questions tonight, I appreciate it and all that stuff. Again, IU kicks off at noon. It's on Fox. Big noon kickoff is at 10 a.m. on Fox Eastern. If you want to watch that or set your DVR to it, have a good night. Keep coming to the site as well, and we'll have all your sports coverage, all of it. We had soccer up today, volleyball up last week. A lot of good fall sports coming up.